Have you been with LaughFest for the whole 10 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, the whole journey.
Yep.
Loving every second of it?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it get busier like this time of year, or is everything already ready to go, so it's not even...
Yeah, this is the busiest time, but it's a lot easier now than it was like in the early years because we know what we're doing now, and we didn't know when we started.
You were just scrambling first?
Yeah, so it's definitely... it's still busy at this time, but not like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So how did LaughFest start? Well, first...
We're just going to hop right into it?
No, first we should do...
Is this happening? Did we start already?
I think we're going.
Well, let's have her introduce yourself.
Sure.
Tell people who you are, and then we'll get to that question.
Sounds good. I'm Joanne Roehm. I work for Gilda's Club in LaughFest. My title is Director of Strategic Initiatives in LaughFest. I've been with the organization 10 years.
Cool. And what episode is this for us?
This is 34.
So episode 34.
34.
Takeaway podcast. Thank you guys for listening.
Good intro. We practiced that one.
Yeah. So, tell us, how did this idea happen? How did it start?
So, Gilda's Club, which I don't know how familiar you guys are, nonprofit organization. We work with people who are on a cancer journey or a grief journey. And when our organization was turning 10 years, we wanted to do something different. And we wanted to create more of a conversation in the community about the work that we do, because those topics, amongst others, are things that societally we're terrible at talking about. We brush them under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about cancer. Right. So we wanted to do something big in honor of our 10-year anniversary. And, we thought about doing a fancy gala dinner, like people do. We wanted to do something more than that. We wanted to tie in comedy because of our namesake, Gilda Radner. And somewhere along the way, someone said 10 days, a 10-day festival for our 10-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. And so we launched in 2011, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Gilda's Club.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And was it, fluid right from the start? Did you fill out the whole 10 days perfectly, or was there, really one day of stuff that was really happening?
No, it was 10 days from the get-go.
Really?
We joke that it's kind of good that we didn't know what we were doing when we started out. Every year at the festival there's been between 150 and I think our highest programming year was somewhere in 230 events during those 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that massive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
230 events.
I never realized. That's crazy.
You have a pretty big team then, right? Or you just do everything by yourself?
No. Not
Star of the
those
show
things.
right here, Vince.
So we have, I would say, maybe 10 or 12 of us in total that work on the festival from our staff. Less than half of those are full-time employees year-round. The rest are seasonal contract staff. So we're really tiny.
Got it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it effective, though.
That's wild. So you're coming up on the 10th year of LaughFest.
Yeah.
So it was 10 days for Gilda's Club. Is there going to be another 10 days for LaughFest? And
I'm really glad that we didn't add a day for every year that went by after
that.
Right.
A whole month eventually.
Yeah, so we're still at 10 days. I will say, as the festival's evolved, there's much more programming that happens on weekends and sort of those peak days and less that happens during the week. But yeah, so for this year, celebrating 10 years of the festival means we're coming into our 20th year of operations for Gilda's Club. So 2 big milestone years for our organization. Thanks. So we're definitely taking some time to reflect on the last 10 years, to look to the future for Gilda's Club and what's happening for our organization. And really leverage that with the community to support, which the community's been incredibly engaged with and supportive of the festival since it began. It's the only way that a teeny nonprofit could produce this thing was with sort of the community support that it's had. But it's amazing to think that it's been 10 years and how far we've come in that time with the festival.
That's wild. And 10 years also seems so short, because I know, I feel like since I've been living here, so I moved here when I was 11, and it was one of the first things that I heard about. It was this big comedy festival that happens every year. It was just one of those things that everyone knew about. And to hear that it's only been around for 10 years, that just sounds so crazy to me. You guys have managed to make such a big impact in such a small amount of time.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
You look at Art Prize and LaughFest, we both started around the same time, both sort of big pillar events for our community now, that were sort of big, wild ideas that no one really kind of knew what was going to happen. But certainly in our case, people that did know Gilda's Club knew that it was a great cause behind it. I think that's a big piece of why they dove in and supported from the get-go. But West Michigan is so interesting. I don't think, I know that LaughFest couldn't be successful just in any community. West Michigan really is super philanthropic, for one, and it really rallies around these sort of large-scale events that are community-driven, and that's a big piece of why it's so successful.
That's true. Yeah,
I agree.
Do you feel, or I guess the question is, why West Michigan? Was it just like the first city that came to mind, or the first part of the state?
Well, so Gilda's Club Grand Rapids, obviously based in West Michigan, and we're part of a much larger affiliate model.
Okay.
But we're an independent 501c3, so all the money that's raised here stays here. And LaughFest is not something that any other Gilda's Club across the country does. It was a unique idea from our team, and we're the only one that does LaughFest, and it hasn't gone anywhere else. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember going back to your saying as a kid, like running around the city and seeing LaughFest.
The smiles everywhere.
That's making me feel really old.
It's icon. Sorry.
Well,
when I was 11, 10 years ago when this festival started.
But in a funny way, I didn't know it was connected to a nonprofit. I thought it was like...
I thought it was just like a comedy festival.
Yeah, I was like, I was like telling people like, you talk about the city, like, we have Art Pride, this big comedy fest, Laugh Fest.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that I didn't know was connected, I think is actually smart, and it's super beneficial because we talk about raising money and being effective and getting people involved with things. A lot of times I feel like, especially when we talk about cancer, and one of my friends right now, she just asked me to partner with her on doing some cancer stuff to help raise money. No one likes asking people for money, especially in West Michigan. Like, it's not like, I feel like it's things we don't talk about is definitely money, right? So I'm like, this is gonna be hard for us to get money, like, because I don't like asking people for money. And I think it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting, and I think very smart as a tactic, but also as like giving people something like through laughter and like to connect it into your 501c, your nonprofit. Really good ideas just work effectively when you execute them that way, right? So, now that I know that LaughFest is connected to a nonprofit, like, kind of like changed my whole viewpoint of it. I didn't know that. I think like that's super cool and smart, especially around like cancer and research, because, I want to raise money for it and be part of it. But it's weird, right? Like, you want to help people, but then like you feel weird for asking people for money, and
you don't know how to help.
Yeah, you don't know how to.
And what you touched on is really important. We say all the time in our organization when we're talking about LaughFest, if you can get people to laugh, you can get them to listen. And if we had started out on our 10-year anniversary and say, hey, we're going to have this cancer festival. It's going to be great. You guys want to come?
Yeah.
Everybody come out to the cancer festival. Wouldn't have had the same, reaction, right?
Yeah.
So it was intentional that a lot of people came to LaughFest, and people still come to LaughFest having no idea that it's connected to Gilda's Club or have no idea about the work that we do. But that's good, because if they walk away with just a tiny bit of knowledge about who we are and what we do, you never want to have to utilize our services. You don't want to be diagnosed with cancer or have a loved one that's diagnosed with cancer, or be grieving someone in your life that's died. But if you do need that, you'll know who we are and where we are. And we're not good about talking about tough stuff in our lives. And that was a big piece of why we wanted to do LaughFest, was to create this conversation about emotional health. We've got incredible medical health care in West Michigan. We've got some really good mental health services in West Michigan. But this emotional health care, sort of the glue that holds you together, is what we don't always deal with, and there aren't good resources for. So we created this festival in part to raise the visibility of who we are and to create this conversation around emotional health and what does happen when something tough happens to you in your life, because we're all going to experience it. We're all going to be touched by it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so I never heard the term emotional health. What is that? I think I want to tie something in, but I want to get your definition to see if it connects.
So we really see mental health care medical health care and emotional health care is kind of like the three sides of the triangle when it comes to taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
When the best example I can give to kind of put emotional health care into context is if you are diagnosed with cancer and you're mad, sad, frustrated, name an emotion, that's not a mental health care issue. That's a normal reaction to something terrible happening in your life. Now, if you don't deal with how you're feeling about that diagnosis, then that can turn into a mental health care issue. But emotional health care is almost like the preventative care, so that you don't get to that place. So Gilda's Club, you guys are so young. Do you know who Gilda Radner is?
I don't, but I feel like if I said that I don't, my mom would get really mad at me.
Shout out to your mom, who's going to be upset.
I know that she knows. Before.
Yeah, I know that she knows.
Okay, so Gilda Radner was one of the original cast members of Saturday Night Live.
I knew it. Okay, I should have said that.
Born in Detroit, so Michigan native. Started, one of the biggest things she did in the beginning was she was in the original cast of Godspell in Toronto with Martin Short, another old SNL cast member. And she was part of this first cast of SNL. And she's really a pioneer for women in comedy and women in entertainment. She did SNL. She married Gene Wilder.
Okay.
Willy Wonka?
Thank you. Yep.
Got it. I'm with it.
Look at you.
Married Willy Wonka. And had they did a bunch of movies together. She was really just on the ascent, and she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And she was, especially for her time, incredibly vocal about her disease and her treatment and everything that she was going through. So when she was diagnosed with cancer, and she has a book, it's called It's Always Something. It's a really incredible read. She would say that she had lost her funny when she was diagnosed with cancer. And for her, it wasn't until she sat in her living room with a bunch of other people who also had cancer that she was able to find her funny back. So it's this concept of community and shared experience with someone who's going through something very similar to you. And that's what we do at Gilda's Club. So Gilda Radner died. And after her death, Gene Wilder and her psychotherapist, Joanna Bull, created Gilda's Club. And it's an emotional support community for people living with cancer or living with grief that allows you to come and be in a room with people who are going through something very similar to you. And there's a whole different sense of connectivity and sharing that can happen when you know that someone is going through something that you are versus, if I have cancer and I'm trying to talk to you about it and you've got no frame of reference because you don't have it. And that is what really founded Gilda's Club. And that's what emotional health is. It's this shared support network, this shared community of shared experience.
That's so powerful because I think so it does tie into what I was thinking. So we live in a world right now where and I'll be careful how I say this because of the climate, but just because a lot of anxiety, depression, a lot of those talks with the young people, and a lot of times I always wanted to say, like, you gotta get your emotions figured out, right? And I think I didn't know emotional health was a thing. And I think since you guys have been doing the work here and working with LaughFest, I think I just in my brain committed to like making that more like a priority, and like people should know about that, because I feel a lot of people who deal with those things, which is totally fine if you deal with them, it comes from like something that happens to you, right? And it's like, it's totally okay for you to feel this way because this is what's happening. You shouldn't feel crazy if you feel this way. And I think we're not giving young people enough time. Like, it's gonna be tough, it's gonna be hard, like this is what life is all about. And I think they blame social media, they blame a lot of things, but I think it comes down to the emotional health side of things. It's like, how can we talk to people that like it's okay if things are bad and you don't feel okay?
Well, we don't teach kids to deal with their emotions, right? We don't teach them how to process anger and sadness and grief and all of those things. We teach kids, if you're sick, you go to a doctor. We don't teach them how to deal with this internal stuff, and we don't model it as adults in a productive way as to how to manage these things.
Right, and I agree with that. I think, and anyone who deals with those problems, I'm not trying to minimize them at all. I empathize with you. But I do think if we teach kids, and like I think, what my parents were probably really good at with me growing up was like, I had to kind of like, not feeling like I had to explain myself, but communicate how I felt, and also they allowed me to be like, it's okay, you feel that way. Mm-hmm. Like they never made me feel crazy for feeling a certain emotion,
right?
And or like feel like I was being ignored. Maybe like I never felt like those kind of feelings, and I think when cancer hits you, my parents are from Jamaica, foreign country, right, island. They're like very like quote unquote woke or positive people. So my mom, she's a naturopath, so a lot of people that comes into our household like are super sick. And my mom is an optimist. My dad's a crazy optimist, and like they don't let people. And it's funny, like there's not when sick people are in the house, we don't talk like we don't allow those kind of, in a weird sense, like happen. It's all positivity. And my mom's like, it's okay to cry. Like that's not a negative thing. Mm-hmm. Like you have cancer. Like who says it's not? But when you're a mom or your husband, like you want to cry on your family, and like so I've seen, I guess maybe as a kid, emotional health. I guess my mom has kind of just naturally showed people or taught people how to cope through sickness, right? Because cancer, and I've seen a lot of people have cancer. It's a scary disease, and it's a lot of times a death sentence. Like it's not one of those like it's you got 2 weeks. Like how do you deal with that, right? And I hope I never get it or have to walk with too many people in my life through it. But it is one of those things where it's like a death sentence. It's not a manageable. It can be. You catch it early enough,
right?
Or work through it. But a lot of times it's like I can see where.
You need that emotional support.
You need it because it's like, and for me, it's like one guy told me he had cancer. He's gone now. And I was a kid. He was like, Vince, what I don't like is everyone's treating me weird.
Yeah, no one knows what to say or what to do, and you can't really expect people to know if they're not experiencing it either. But there's a middle ground between stuffing everything up and not talking about anything and holding it all in and saying, be positive, just put a smile on your face and everything's going fine. There's a middle ground here that says be real. At Gilda's Club we say come as you are, and some of those days are going to be great days and some are going to be terrible days, and even if you have cancer, life is still funny. There's a lot of, people come to Gilda's Club and walk through the door and expect it to be this dark, depressing place and everybody's walking around sick and crying. And that's absolutely not true. There's certainly tears that are shed. But there's a lot of levity and laughter too, because we're normalizing that experience. People have to live their new normal when they go through something like that. It doesn't mean they're not normal people anymore. It just means something has happened to them, and we have to help normalize that experience.
And through comedy and laughter, I feel like it's such a great way to
it heals everything, honestly.
Like laughter heals everything, right? In the sense of wow. Yeah. Super inspired right now, 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
That's good.
It hit me in a different
way. Well, I will say it doesn't heal everything, but it does. It's a common emotion, right, that we all share. And going back to that, if you can get people to laugh, you can get people to listen. We wanted LaughFest to be an accessible way, an accessible platform for us to talk about that tough stuff in a much more palatable way than if you're just wanting to talk to somebody about cancer, or it's a much lighter way of bringing up this very difficult topic and sort of the first step in normalizing that conversation in society.
Yeah, because I think you guys touched on something. You touched on something very powerful about. I relate to that. If you walked in there, it was all negative and gloomy, right? And not saying other cancer is like that, but it is kind of not cool and it's not palatable, right? It's not easy for people to get into, which then creates a weird pressure or awkwardness, as I call it, right? A feeling and we all felt it before. We're a human being. And well, how do we and LaughFest and making it more palatable? I feel like it's obvious in a sense. I can't believe I feel like more people should take this approach because you can get way more done that way. And in a weird way, and I don't want to say this is true for everybody, a blatant statement, but it puts a weird pressure on people when we don't make it like that. People who don't have it, because they're well, I don't know if I dealt with it.
I don't know how to deal with it.
Right. And
I feel a lot of ambiguity there.
Right, it's weird and things you're not taught or we don't talk about. We don't, you're not taught it. So, but through laughter and having a platform and making it easier is well, we can still be effective with our mission, but also do it in this way. And I don't know, that's I just didn't know. Now my brain is going off about how you can do things to get your end goal. But not making it just one way, right? Make it more easy to eat, bite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel like a lot of things get tackled. I mean, I think we all have had problems that we've dealt with in our personal lives, and it's like, if you can find that light or find that easier way to digest it, everything just kind of gets easier. You know, like it's almost something that you can point to every time. And I know that personally for me, laughter is that for me most of the time. Like if I stub my toe, like I'm gonna laugh about it because it makes it easier to deal with than like sitting there and crying about it, right? And that's just like kind of how I approach everything anyway. And so like I like hearing like you guys' approach to everything, and it's like really inspiring, like Vincent. But so speaking of making people laugh, you know, it's been 10 years of, you know, you said like hundreds of events and all this stuff. Is there a personal favorite for you of a comedian that's came through or an event that's came through that like you just think just rocked the show and rocked the city?
There's people that stand out to me over the years for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from sort of a prestige standpoint, whenever you can get one of those sort of legendary names through the festival, whether I like them as a comic personally or not, is huge. You know, the year we had Jay Leno, who is just like synonymous with stand-up comedy.
Right.
You know, we had Amy Schumer and Kevin Hart very early on in the festival. You know, whenever you can have a big name through, that's certainly very memorable because we don't always see those names in Grand Rapids, you know, a secondary, tertiary market. We don't get all of those come through. When we had Trevor Noah a couple of years ago, you know, just some really big names, those always stand out. You know, for me personally, comedy is so personal, right? We all laugh at different things. So some of my personal favorites, John Mulaney a couple of years ago.
Hilarious.
Ron Funches. Very early on, we had Garfunkel and Oates. I come from a musical background, so any sort of musical comedy for me, I really enjoy. So there's been tons over the years. And I love, too, when we have really fiercely strong women comics, too, because you know, stand-up comedy is such a white male-dominated industry that whenever you can provide some diversity, I love that, and we've been very intentional about that with the festival, too, is to try and ensure that the talent that's coming through is representative of our broader community and try and have a little bit of something for everybody. And that comes in the acts themselves, but it also comes in, we have family-friendly stuff that happens during the festival. We have clean comedy because we are West Michigan, and we have the really raunchy, you know, the dirty show too. So just like cancer and grief, you know, they happen to everybody. We want to make sure that the festival is accessible to everybody too, and has a lot of different things throughout the 10 days. So there have been a lot of incredible acts that have come through that have been really.
Is there anybody locally that have been running the circuit that maybe come out to LaughFest, you know, that you find like super funny? Anyone from West Michigan or that like you ran into like, yo, they're like seriously funny? Or
well, we've worked very closely from the beginning with a lot of the local comics in our area, and also a lot of the sketch and improv groups in our area, because we wanted to make sure that, yes, we were bringing in these big names, and that's exciting, but we wanted to highlight what was already happening here. So, you know, I have a group of local comics that I've been meeting with since year one, and we meet a couple of times a year, and they've been really great ambassadors for the festival. They host a lot of shows during the festival. If an act's coming in and they need an opener, you know, I'll often go to that pool of people to have them come out and do stuff. And we've had local comics that have produced their own shows during the festival that have become sort of festival staples. So our Dirty show that I mentioned earlier, Stu McAllister started it, kind of passed the torch to Adam Deggy as it went over time. Both great, funny guys. We have the Rockin' Homegrown Jam, which is kind of all comics want to be rock stars, and rock stars want to be comics at some level. And so it's a hybrid of comedy and performing with a live band. You know, just this year, Mike Logan's doing his roast battle show as part of the festival. So really trying to bring in some of the local guys and supporting them and building shows around them during the festival too.
That's awesome.
Is that roast like battle like what I think it is? Like they're roasting people? I got to go to that.
Yeah, that sounds like right up my alley.
Yeah, so I gotta go check that one out.
Roasting is my favorite form of comedy, for sure. So one of the names that stood out to me for this year's festival was J.P. Spears, and I think, personally speaking, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, I heard of him through YouTube and like Instagram comedy. So is that kind of like an avenue that you guys are looking at more in the future? Is getting more of these like modern day, we'll call it, comedians?
We've had a good amount, I feel like, of YouTube comics over the years.
Okay.
Probably our longest standing one is an act called Miranda Sings.
That's great.
You know who that is?
Yeah. I haven't heard that name in a long time though.
Like,
that's
kids
funny.
when she was like popping off.
Yeah.
So let's see. She
Miranda
first
Sings.
came to the festival maybe 2013, I can't remember. And at that
so that's really early on for her.
Yeah, and at that point, the festival had been going long enough that we had some good rapport with agents, because at first, when we started the festival, which is kind of another piece of this, in terms of learning the comedy industry and the booking piece of it, because a big piece of my job is booking the festival.
Okay.
So we had built some rapport, the first few years of the festival, and we were pitched Miranda Sings, and I was like, I have no idea who this person is. I watched some videos, was like, I still don't feel like I have any idea
Her videos are
who this is, right?
Weird.
And we had her the first time she was here at Wealthy Theater, which
Okay.
is small, 400 seat. And walking into that show was like walking into a rock concert filled with girls in red sweatpants or red lipstick and going wild for an act like I've never seen before. She's back this year. This will be her third time at the festival. Wow. And talk about a non-traditional act, very much YouTube driven.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've taken some chances on people like that over the years. We had Matt Belisai just last year, who's the Wine About It guy. He has all these YouTube videos where he basically gets drunk, drinks, a bunch of wine and gets drunk, and just like rants about various topics. So we've had quite a bit of the YouTube stars over the years, and you can't really not at this point if you're booking a festival like we are, because 100%. The point of entry for comics looks so different now. There's a full spectrum of how you can, get your start in the industry versus what it used to be like.
Yeah, we had a comedian on for the start of this year, and we were talking about that with him, about how it's so different. Like, our generation, we find comedians on Twitter all the time. Like, someone will get a viral video, then the next week, all of a sudden, they got a YouTube series, and then maybe they're doing TikTok videos every week, and it's just like, there's definitely like a million ways to get into the game now.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's crazy. Like, a lot of them have podcasts. Like, the list goes on and on,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, not just to enter comedy, but to maintain your career in comedy. And I know you guys and Al talked about this a little bit too, about, it's not just starting in the clubs, doing the clubs, working however many weeks out of the year, and, moving up to feature to headliner status, and, now there's podcasting, there's live shows that aren't stand-up, there's TV specials and YouTube series, as you mentioned. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can not just get into the business, but maintain your career. Yeah. And that puts a lot of pressure on acts, too. Because there are expectations now in terms of maintaining their digital following and their digital presence that comics didn't have to worry about in the past. So it can be written into deals with clubs and theaters in terms of what you post and when you post. And again, I don't want to duplicate what you guys talked about with Al, but you have to be responsible through your social media channels to help sell those tickets too.
Yeah, true.
And that's a lot of pressure for comics.
Yeah, and I think in the entertainment industry, who that artist Russ is? He talks about this a lot. He's like, hard tickets. Like, he was like, at the end of the day, you gotta put people in seats, and how do you do that? Comes with social media as a tool to help you build your brand.
Right.
But you can't just have followers and no one buys tickets from you, because, well,
you see right through it.
So that ties into my next question. Like, LaughFest is here at this point. What's the vision? Where are you guys gonna take it?
Yeah. So the festival was never designed to be like, we're going to start this and we're going to do it forever. We started it primarily to raise awareness for who we are and what we do, and to, create that platform to talk about emotional health, as I mentioned. We were hopeful that it would generate some revenue for the organization. we didn't know if it would in the beginning, being sort of a new business, you could look at it as. And so our commitment has been, as long as it's still doing those things, it's raising awareness for who we are and what we do, and it's generating some revenue for the organization and diversifying the money that's coming in. Then we'll and the community is responding to it, butts and seats, and coming out and supporting the festival. We'll continue to do it for as long as it makes sense to, and I don't know how many years that'll be.
Right.
But we're 10 in, and that's pretty exciting and a feat in and itself. It's not an easy business.
Yeah.
No, at all.
So you said that you're the one that's kind of in charge of booking everybody. Do you feel a responsibility to get kind of like that haymaker headliner that like everyone knows, and it's like, or do you feel like it's more important to spread it out? Like, what's your personal approach to it?
Yeah. So I work with, we work with a booking agency. We have done since the first year, and we have a very close relationship. The booking process usually starts July-ish of the year prior. And we're looking at a lot of different things when we book. We're looking at, people's sales numbers. We're looking at how they're selling in markets. We're looking at, who might have specials coming out, or TV shows or movies or something that helps sort of elevate them. Again, we're not, the Midwest is a growing comedy market, but we're not, New York or LA or even Chicago. So, and stand-up comedy has had a resurgence in pop culture in the last, it aligns pretty closely with around the time that we started the festival, actually. So a lot of people are more familiar with stand-ups and comedy now than they used to be. It doesn't have to be anymore, just someone that you know from the movies, which is a lot of times how people knew comics in the past. But with Netflix and Amazon and all these other things. So we look at who's selling tickets. We look at who's going out on tour. Because we've been doing this so long, we get pitched acts now from agents each year. So they'll come to us and say, this is who we want to do the festival. And so we have to kind of sort through that. And then, like I said before, we really try to be representative of our community to the best that we can on any given year. So we're looking at different demographics, and we're looking at different styles of comedy. We're looking at YouTube. We're looking at clean comedy. We're trying to have a good mix of things so that there really is something for everybody. So getting a big name, there can definitely be, for me, I feel my own pressure, particularly if we have like a great lineup and a great year, and then you come off and you're like, feels like pressure to top that, right? But it just looks different on any given year. And one year, a big name may mean something to you, and the next year you may be excited to someone. So that definition of headliner has really changed too. Last year we had Ali Wong.
Hilarious.
And
Hilarious.
But so many people, if you don't know her from her stand-up, and this was before the movie and some of the more pop culture things she's had since then, you wouldn't have any idea who she was.
You might say that the festival was bad last year.
And generationally, there's differences too. She definitely skewed to a younger audience and sold out DeVos Performance Hall. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we had Ed Asner last year, who's sort of like I Love Lucy generation, baby boomer generation. So really trying to play to different audiences so that there's not just one style of comedy or one style of show.
I think it'd be crazy if like a Dave Chappelle came to West Michigan. I think that would be iconic.
Well, he's been here, not for the festival, but Dave's at the point in his career and life where he doesn't plan any dates in advance at this point. So he can call a venue a week before or 2 weeks before, call up his agent and say, hey, I want to go do a weekend. This is what happened actually in the last time he was here in Grand Rapids. He said, I want to do, a weekend of dates or whatever. It was maybe 2 weeks before probably when that phone call happened. And then the tickets went on sale like a week before, not even, and sold out multiple shows. But not everybody
has that pull and
like that.
He's
the exception. He's the exception rather than the rule.
I think he took like 10 years off of his career and then just came back and is still selling everything out.
Still funny.
Yeah.
So do you have a personal list of these are the people that for sure at some point I want to get to come to the city? Do you have your hit list?
Yeah, totally.
Are you going to share that with the fans?
A few of them I will. And I will say it's such a shell game too, because it depends on what people have going on. If they're shooting a movie or if they're doing a TV show, particularly like a primetime or a late night show, they shoot 6 nights a week. They can only do something on Saturday nights if they choose to. Like, there's a lot of reasons why someone can or can't come here. I would love to get Zach Galifianakis.
Oh my god,
would be fantastic.
Yeah, he's fucking weird.
Tom Segura is someone I've always wanted at the festival. He actually was in Grand Rapids last year. At 20 Monroe Live. That doesn't mean he won't ever be at the festival, but that's someone there. Chelsea Peretti, I would love to get at the festival. I certainly have my list, and we kind of and that's not just because they're comics that I like. If we booked a festival based on just like who we liked, then that's only going to appeal to a certain amount of people. But based on who we hear, people want to see. And then there's a lot of people. Every year people will ask, well, Chappelle is one, or Chris Rock, or Ellen. Those people aren't, as a rule of thumb,
some people just
going
aren't
out
attainable.
and doing. They're not going out and doing stuff. I mean, Ellen just did her first special in a long time and did a very small pocket of dates. I think maybe just in LA, but she didn't go out and broadly tour. But
she doesn't exactly need to tour anymore.
Break if like Ellen came.
But
I feel like
I don't know if that's
like
probably her. And then Tina Fey and Amy Poehler I get asked about a lot. Neither of whom are stand-ups, by the way. So
that's funny.
There's definitely like a number of people. There's people that I would like to have at the festival, and then there's a group of people that we're always requested at, and some of those may come to fruition someday, and some may never. So
are you at the point where you have to plan out? Are you already planning for next year type of thing, or is it
somewhat? When we first started out, it was very reactive. I mean, we're not, as an organization, in the business of running a comedy festival. We didn't know anything about the industry. We didn't know anything about producing a festival. So I would say it took the best part of 10 years for us to get the systems and the processes in place to be able to think proactively 6 months, a year out, versus just sort of next thing. So I have multi-year plans that are in place that provide framework for further years, and generally as we get close to a festival is when you're thinking about the festival coming, but you're also thinking about the next one.
Yeah.
Do you have a hard time sitting down and enjoying the festivals yourself because of that stress? Or are you able to just relax?
Well, that's not something that I do, sit down and enjoy the festival.
Okay.
It's all hands on deck, all 10 days, all the time.
We're working right now.
Yeah, so that's not really something that's an option. I do, for my team, I try, if anybody wants to see a show, I try to make sure everybody on the team gets to see a show. But it's just busy. I wouldn't even say there's certainly stressful moments. It's a huge event, but it's just go. Once you hit those 10 days, you're just going from place to place, show to show. And a lot of what I do during the festival is dealing with the artists themselves once they get here. Well, the advancing process, and once they get here, I'm managing those logistics and interactions. So
shifting gears a little bit, do you have any advice for people who want to maybe start like festivals like that in the city? Like, what things they should look out for, things they should think about? I know you guys just kind of had the idea. It wasn't really that planned. But just being 10 years in, what things you notice, like things that people should be aware of?
I think you have to first look at the landscape that already exists and make sure that whatever you're looking to bring to the table is different and that you're meeting a need or a desire in the community. this sounds sort of biased, but I wouldn't necessarily advise someone to start another comedy festival in West Michigan. Not because I'm worried about the competition necessarily, but we are a small market. We can only handle so much. We don't want to be doing so many different events and festivals all on top of each other that we don't have the market to absorb it all. You know, you can go to Chicago and there's a festival happening every day of the week. Most of Chicago doesn't know it. It's not like in West Michigan when one happens and everybody knows about it. It's a much bigger market size. So I think, first of all, looking at what already exists and make sure you're not duplicating something unnecessarily, and really looking at sort of the placement of that in the scope of the community. So for us, we wanted to do February, March-ish because it tied in with the anniversary of Gilda's Club. It's not like a prime time of year for events by any stretch of the imagination. But we sort of flipped that on its head to try and help it work for us, and that we're all coming out of this Michigan winter, and we need to laugh at something. So this is sort of like the first rite of spring for West Michigan now is LaughFest. But just really thinking about the scope of entertainment options that are already happening in the market and the time of year of different things, and trying whenever you can to complement something, you know, rather than competing. I think the other thing, which is contrary to our specific example, is to really creating a framework for something before you launch it and really having a good plan in place. We were lucky in a lot of ways. A lot of the critical work around LaughFest didn't really happen till about 6 months before the first one. We're lucky that it worked, but I'm a big believer in planning and process in anything that you do. And so I think trying, even if you have a brilliant idea, putting some framework around it before you just go.
Yeah. So do you have, you might not want to say names, but do you have any personal, like, extreme headaches from this? Like any super divas that just came in and ruined the whole thing and wanted you to do a million favors? You don't have to say names.
Well, I mean, nobody has the power to ruin everything, right? Like, none of us are that important.
But you should definitely say names.
But there are definitely people that have been difficult to work with. I mean, you work in any level of entertainment or not. I mean, people are the hardest part of any job, no matter who they are. The hardest part of life, and often the most beautiful. But in this context, the hardest part of life. I would say more often than not, people have been great, but there's certainly some acts along the ways that have been difficult. You know, there's acts that come in with very elaborate green room requests in terms of their catering and everything that's on their rider, and that's something that you have to spend a lot of time and energy on putting together because it's contractual. I have had artists stealing alcohol from each other's green rooms before and having to like manage that.
That's funny.
I mean, there's been a lot of things over the years that have been.
Have you ever had to like stop a fight backstage between performers?
No, I haven't had to do that.
Maybe
which is good because I don't know how much good I would do.
Is there like managing, like they're walking in, they have to make sure they're out 30 minutes before because they don't. Is there anything like that, like those people managements, or
like time management?
Or what was like people? The weird food request? Like if someone ordered a whole bunch of escargot.
Yeah,
like
I haven't had anything like, you know, people will talk about only green M&Ms or something. Like I haven't had anything that crazy.
I don't know how I'd handle that.
There are definitely some that have like you know, very specific brands of things, most often like organic type health food things, which aren't always accessible in our market. So you really have to figure out how to get that. And to be fair, most of them are pretty cool about it too. You know, in the advancing process, when you're working with management leading up to the festival, you can address some of that and see if you can sub things out. I can't say there's anything that's been insane to me, you know, in that regard. I hear it's worse in the music industry, but most are pretty easy. And there's complete opposite ends of the spectrum too. You know, you'll have some comics that want, you know, 3 bottles of water and a bag of chips and they're good, you know, and then you'll have people that basically have 3-course meals on their riders. So there's just a big spectrum. And as a rule of thumb, I would say the bigger the act is, in general, the easier they are. It's often the people that are like just coming up or just about to break that have sort of like that power moment for a minute that they tend to be harder to handle.
Interesting. That's interesting.
That makes sense though, because I can see like a Dave or like an Ellen, like, yo, I just want to do my thing. I don't really care. I'm not trying to be here longer than I have to be, and also like just care more about at this point doing what I love to do. It's not about money. It's not about I don't need anyone to respect me. I don't need any more power. Like I just want to do it. I can definitely see why like when you transcend to that level, it's kind of more of like I just kind of want to do my thing.
And it can also be the management ahead of time that's harder to deal with than the act themselves when they get here. That is really trying to. Maybe that act is just breaking and getting a lot of attention, and so that management is really trying to protect them and make sure everything's perfect and make sure they have a good experience, because ultimately that reflects on the manager and the agent too. Right. And so not only do they want to protect their client as a person, but they want to protect their paychecks. So oftentimes, working with the management can be harder than, when the comic themselves actually gets here.
Wow.
And some managers are great too. So it's just it's all over.
It's for the team, right? Like a 3-course meal. Like the comic is like, I just want to do my thing. They're like, man, and he wants filet mignon, want roasted salmon. Just so the team, like the crew, can all like just eat while they're just like and they're doing their thing and stuff. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Sometimes people can get really specific about what they want, and it's not necessarily in a demanding way. But we also, I think, one of the reasons why the festival has done so well industry-wise is that we treat people really well here. Which we do in West Michigan nice. Like people are always pleasantly surprised when they come to West Michigan, period. And we should be, that's something to be proud of, even though we joke about it. But, we always try to make sure that our artists have an exceptional experience at the festival so that they go away and tell not just their managers and their agents, but they tell their peers. And so this word of mouth about what a great, well-run festival LaughFest is and how much fun it is to be here and how well they take care of you, like that goes a long way in the business too. So it's sort of that balance between doing what's reasonable for an artist, but also, making sure that they have a good experience and they walk away saying good things about LaughFest in West Michigan.
So as the the operation side of things, do you feel pressure or stress for comedians to perform? Like when you hear stories about, the show was bad or they bombed the whole time, do you kind of like put that on yourself, or is it easy for you to brush that off as a team?
No, and I would say we're also talking about the level of comics. I mean, it's not like they would never bomb, but like most of the acts that we bring in are large headliners that do, arenas or the hall or, so I just don't even worry about that. On our showcases, like Al did our national showcase, I think, I think he did our national showcase pretty early on. And it's like 4 to 6 comics and they have 20-minute sets each. And so it's a variety of comics in one show. And I don't worry about it then either, because some of them will have bad sets, but there's 6 of them on the lineup, and they all sort of cater to different sensibilities anyways. I don't know that I've ever had significant feedback about someone bombing. I think if we do get feedback, it tends to be more about content, which is not our responsibility to manage, but that people like to complain about
because too much swearing in
comedy
that show.
Is subjective, so different, and not just like swearing, but different topics hit people in different ways. So I certainly deal with a handful of.
Can we protect comedy? Because I feel like that's the one space where that can happen. Because it's like you can't do it anywhere else in life right now. Well, but in comedy, I feel like. Now, if you don't want to listen to it, that's totally fine. And maybe we should do a better job of letting you know disclaimers what we're going to talk about. But, like, I feel like it's one of those spaces in life where, like, no, it's comedy. We're supposed to make fun of everything and everyone. Like, this is the one space to be able to do it. Yeah. And, like...
I mean, that's a big topic in stand-up these days is political correctness and what can you talk about and what can you can't. And, me personally, myself, I see comics... Like, comedy and hip-hop, basically, are, like, the orators of society at this point. Like, they're the storytellers of society. They're the ones that are out there talking about difficult things. And it's always been that way. Always, always, always. And if you start censoring comedy or art in any way, then you're losing the reality of what it is. So it's certainly a conversation that's happening, and comics have to cater to that, and always have had to cater to that in a certain way, because if a comic is going on a late night show, they're going on Fallon or something like that. I mean, they have very specific parameters on what they can and can't do during those 3 minutes on that show. Yeah. And it's often very different to what they would do in a club.
Exactly.
And some of the early feedback that we had to navigate in terms of content was people that had seen a comic do a late night set, or on Dancing with the Stars, or on a primetime TV show, came to the show expecting to see that and getting something very different. Like, people just need to, we help more than most comedy festivals do, help people do their research to realize, which you would think people just would, but we place some, not ratings, but some sort of guidelines to help people recognize what type of comedy they're going to see, and then beyond that, they have to just figure it out themselves.
Yeah, it's funny. I had that experience a lot growing up. I'd watch, like, rest in peace Robin Williams, but I'd watch, like, Hook or, like, Aladdin, and then you throw on Robin Williams stand-up, and it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to be watching this. Like, my parents would make me turn it off, and I think that's, like, a really common thing, because a lot of comedians drift off into the children's comedy movie, because that's where the money is, right? And then you don't realize that their foundation of their whole stand-up is, like, super raunchy and, talking about these real-world subjects. And I think a lot of people have that experience, especially in the Midwest, where, we're a little bit more conservative than most cities. Yeah. So I think that's, like, a real thing that we go through.
And then you touched on a good point about you shouldn't be trying to censor, like, comedy or hip-hop. Cause I just envisioned in my head, instead of NWA, it was like GWA, like Guys with Attitude. Like, wouldn't it be like the same thing?
Guys with Attitude.
Like, you just lose the whole touch.
That's like me when I don't eat. Guys with Attitude.
Exactly, right? So
getting hangry.
Wow, that was bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
Hey, you still have comedy dreams.
Yeah, right.
It's hard. I mean, you can't protect people in that way. To a certain point, people have to do their homework to know what they're going to see and have a better understanding. They may still be surprised, but at least they've done their research. Yeah. And I think if you start censoring comics, or our clean showcase, we definitely have specific parameters around what that is supposed to be, because it's the brand of the show. But in terms of, like, trying to control what a comic's going to talk about beyond that, like, it just
wouldn't work.
And I would
honestly
say more of the complaints that we've had have been around the clean showcase, because while they don't swear and there's it's not vulgar, it's still adult subject matter, and so people react different ways to different things, and we can't take ownership of that.
Yeah, I think you can definitely find whatever you're looking for. Like, if you want to find comedians that are super PC and won't talk about certain things, you can find that. Like, there's definitely there's a type of plate for every appetite, right? Like, Dave Chappelle had a special come out this year where he just made fun of political correctness the whole time. So, like, if you're completely against it, you're going to be able to find it. Or if you're with it and you like censorship in comedy, you can find that kind of thing. And I think clean showcases is an example of that, where, like, you'll have the comedians come in that just don't care about what they say, and then you'll have the ones that are willing to censor it up a bit so that it's easier to digest. I think it's just how it is, right? Like, I don't think you'll ever get in a situation where all comedians follow the same guidelines. I don't think we'll ever get in that, because kind of what makes comedy funny is saying stuff that most people are afraid to say, at least in my experience.
It's commentary on life. Like, it's just literally human experience, and and that's why comedy makes so much sense for Gilda's Club and for the work that we're doing more broadly. When you go to a comedy show, it's a live comedy show. It's a community. It's a shared experience that will never be duplicated, because the people in the room and what's happening on stage is always going to look and feel different. Right. But that laughter is what kind of unites everybody. It's that shared experience. And that's why it has such good synergy with the community of support that we provide at Gilda's Club, and why laughter and comedy makes sense with with what we do, and why that's sort of the platform that we chose to take in terms of doing something big for our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Wow.
Congrats on the 10-year anniversary, by the way.
Yeah.
Big ups on that.
That's great. Yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation because I definitely didn't know about everything that you guys are doing in the community. And it's honestly just like super inspiring. And it's a great thing that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Yeah.
As a member of the community.
Thank you. A lot of viewers and listeners too. A lot of young people. I know I'm gonna be going to more shows for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even the young people who might be interested in the game, because with social media now, like there's a lot of funny people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like also what's weird. Kind of we talked with Al a little bit. Like there's no formula, like in a sense, unless you come from big markets that have it kind of like plugged in already. But like. Kids here, like if LaughFest wasn't here, where could they go be funny?
Well, and we have had since the first year of the festival. We've had a submission process where anybody can get up. In fact, we have first timer showcases where if you've never done stand up before, you can get up on stage and have your 3 minutes, which sounds like no time at all, but that's an eternity of time for someone starting out. So we try and have those opportunities for people to get up and showcase their talents. But comedy is an art form, like any other art form. I think it gets sort of swept under the rug a lot of times. And again, you guys talked about this with Al, like just because you're funny in conversation doesn't mean you're going to be a great stand-up. And it doesn't mean that you can just take that funny and get out on stage and perform. I mean, the formulas for everybody is different, but you have to work and prepare and practice in order to execute and to be able to deliver jokes. And some of the best stand-ups that look so, it may seem so organic when they're on stage. They're the most disciplined writers and performers because they're curating that act over time.
Yeah, I love the way you touched on that because I think a lot of young people, at least that I run into, they just think it's all this luck and you happen to be like, no, dude, like there's a lot of hard work. Like to be that seamless, you're talking the whole time. Like really like slow down and think about it. Like they're probably naturally funny people, but then the topics they decide to talk about are deep topics, and then they have to do research, and then they get their own perspective, and then they write a funny joke. Like that's hard to do. And conversation is way easier, like to make right. But to think about a whole setup, a whole story, make everybody laugh. That's not easy, bro.
No.
That's not easy. And I see comics that do it because I think they're great storytellers, and I love comics who tell stories, like not just the one line. Because now I'm into the story, I want to see, and I love the comics that like start with a story, then do a whole bunch of jokes that are like completely unrelated, you think, and then tie it all back in together. It's like, oh my god, that's so good, and that's hard to do, right?
It's brilliant. Yeah.
You have to remember your jokes, right?
You have to remember the order that fits them best,
and you also can't like not laugh too much yourself. Right, because like laughing's addicting, right? Like when other people are laughing, you want to laugh, so you want to like make sure you're like also like, all right, this is working great. Yeah. Like let me continue to like be funny and not like lose your train of thought.
Yeah. I think that's like one of the most impressive things to me is that, like they don't forget the joke. Like it's weird. Like I watch a lot of like outside of stand up, like I don't know, debates or whatever, and you'll hear someone like go through like half of the point and then forget the rest. And it's amazing to me that I've never heard a comedian do that. Like, they never get halfway through the joke and then forget the punchline. Like, I've just never heard that before. Like, most of the time they
wouldn't show it, though, either, right? Like, on the video.
Yeah, I mean, they might, like... Yeah. No, but I mean, like, I've been to shows in person, and I'm just like, no one's ever just, like, given up halfway through a joke. It's always like, okay, they're just not... nothing's working. They might just skip a joke. And that's what I also have a kind of zipper point, but being, like... or they're bombing, but I find it funny. Yeah. So like you're also the only one laughing. Everyone's like mad, or like doesn't find it like this person's hilarious. Yeah. Like it's also bombing
funny.
Can be funny.
Huh?
Bombing can be funny.
Bombing can be funny, but it's funny like when like a comic goes into. I was in Traverse City, and it was like a black comic, and obviously the market there like wasn't understanding the fuck he was talking about. Like anything he had to say.
You know who it was?
I don't remember his name. I just walked to. It was at some casino, and we all walked in there and like. Yeah, they're doing a comedy show, and like obviously the people that are there are like older, and this dude comes out and he's being fucking hilarious, and I'm the only one laughing because he's talking about things that like only like I would like get pretty much, but I find it funny because like people are saying he's bombing, like boo. I'm like, nah, dude, he's hilarious.
His perspective is kind of what we talked about earlier.
What I'm tying to your point is like the fact that he kept going and didn't like try to change his joke up or like not. Yeah, like he kind of like, well, I know that like. I'm not being funny right now to you guys, and like, but like he just kept kind of
just ran with it.
Well, and some comics sort of divisive, I think. So some comics will intentionally adjust their act based on the market that they're going into, and some will not adjust it. Like, no matter what, it's gonna be what it is. And it's two sort of different school of thought, I think, as to how, because every room is different and every community is different and the demographics in the room are different, and so you have to be responsive to what's happening in the room one way or another. And you can't just quit and walk off the stage.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, you can, but
You definitely can, and that might make for a funnier exit to begin with.
I've seen like amateur comics do that,
Oh.
but not necessarily professionals.
That's great. So for the listeners, when does LaughFest start?
So the festival opens March 5th,
Okay.
runs through the 15th. We open up on the 5th with Jim Gaffigan at the arena.
Jim Gaffigan's
Not
hilarious.
really a lot of tickets left for that at this point, though. But yeah, 10 days of
Pure
over
laughter.
150 shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, every night of the week, every type of sensibility, all over Grand Rapids and beyond.
Do you have any personal recommendations for us to go check out? Any highlights for you?
A couple that I'm excited about this year. One is Russell Peters, who is just a global superstar.
Russell's
Has not been to, maybe no surprise, been in West Michigan before. Works a lot internationally. I mean, he was the first comic to have a Netflix special. Actually just dropped his 9th special a couple of weeks ago.
Good for him. He's getting that money.
So, I mean, a legendary. And he's not someone you know from the movies, or, I mean, he is a comic through and through.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the opportunity to have him here. And then a lesser known, perhaps, comic, his name is Adam Caton Holland. He's actually part of the Grolics, which is a sketch group. They had a show on True TV called Those Who Can't. He actually is doing a one-man show, which is based on a book that he wrote, and it's called My Happy Place. And stay with me, it's about his sister's death by suicide. And it is a poignant and hilarious hour plus of stage time. I mean, it is not a traditional stand-up comedy show, but he is a stand-up comic, and he's incredibly funny, and he really uses humor to execute his point and his experience. And I saw the show in Montreal this past summer. It's just one of the most brilliant pieces of work that I've seen, and I'm thrilled that we have that this year too.
Awesome. That's some good recommendations.
It's funny, not funny, but that's cool he made a set about that.
Yeah.
That's deep stuff right there.
Well, it's human experience.
Yeah.
That's what comedy is. It's telling stories, relatable stories, even if the subject matter is difficult or controversial.
Still gotta push through.
There you go. So you can get tickets at where?
LaughFestGR.org.
Boom.
All the shows are available there. You can also go to the DeVos Place or Van Andel box offices. And then our LaughFest Central office opens on the 17th of February. That's at 120 Ionia next to Pepino's. You can get tickets there too.
Cool. There you go. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes.
That's a wrap.